We've got 3 for the price of 1 right now. We've got my favorite Canadian, Rob Potvin. We've got Ant the Man, Darlow. And first up, we've got Michael Managhan. Come on, Mike. Give it up, please. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, thank you. All right. Thank you. So I am going to be taking you through this today, a practical guide to getting started with blueprints. So the goal of this presentation is to start with the 0 situation, where maybe you've heard of blueprints or you've been told that you need to use blueprints, but beyond the name, you're not super familiar with them. And really get you to the hero position, where you have set them up, you've deployed them, and you've activated and started getting some value into your organization. Later, then, we'll do a live demo with my 2 co-hosts here. So, on that note, whoops, one more. Bingo. So this is the agenda. We're going to start with a nice little introduction. We're going to talk about blueprints, what they are, their sort of main characteristics and the technology behind them. Then we're going to take a second to talk about the actual development process of blueprints. It's quite an interesting journey from the software side. And additionally, some of the choices that we made there actually ended up informing how you interact with them. Then we're going to talk about using blueprints, deploying them in your organization, what you can expect, maybe critically what you shouldn't expect. We're going to take a stop by the roadmap, where we're going to talk about features that are coming. Maybe there's something in there that you're waiting for before you actually deploy the features. And then we're going to finish it off with my 2 handsome co-hosts who are hiding backstage right now, and they're going to give you some live demos. So the much more interesting part than what I'm doing right now. All right, so first off, blueprints and overview. Blueprints are Jamf's new device management workflow that is based off of Apple's new Declarative Device Management Protocol. And they're built to be dynamic and future-proof. So it's not just today's configuration, but we really want this to be a foundation for the many future features that Apple is going to continue to bring out. So this is going to evolve as Apple continues to evolve this feature, and it is very important that we sort of understand how to adopt it in our organization. Now, critically, don't mix up blueprints with products from like Jamf Now or some other third parties. Those are very different. So critically, they're not suited for large organizations. Those types of blueprints are targeted at organizations who need a very simple set of configurations and are maybe looking to just sort of stay at that size. So they don't scale well. And critically, those blueprints usually only allow you to assign a single blueprint to a device. The Jamf Pro and Jamf School Blueprints, on the other hand, are much more sophisticated. They are designed for larger enterprise organizations that need advanced device management capabilities and ease of use at scale. So really being able to configure and grow as your organization changes or your security needs increase. There's no limit to the number of configurations or groups that you can create and assign to a blueprint. And similarly, you can assign multiple blueprints to a group. So you can see here, we have our base configuration, and then having additional blueprints that cover jobs, VIPs, things along those lines. And additionally, ease of use is one of the key values of blueprints. There's no more disjointed configuration across mobile and Mac. So you can actually configure both those platforms in a singular blueprint. Blueprints are also built on multi-tenant. It's our new architecture that will allow us to do faster rollouts and the ability to respond to Apple's changing technologies as they come out in faster than real time. And even though there's a significant roadmap ahead of us, we are very committed to keeping pace with Apple's changes as they come out. So long story short, Blueprints is a major step forward in how we friendly, quickly, and reliably deliver Apple's latest features to you guys. So, I stated before that Blueprints would rapidly react to Apple's changes faster than ever. And you might be wondering, how does that actually happen? How do we deliver on such a bold promise? Well, the answer comes down to one simple word: platform. Jamf is rebuilding its foundations as shared services to modernize our tech stack. And you might be asking, why do we need to do this in the first place? Well, our organization has made multiple acquisitions throughout the years. And as that has happened, we've recognized the need for a unified approach, a way to manage our growing Apple ecosystem. So let me show you how this approach actually shakes out with an example. So you can see here our two MDMs. We have ourselves Pro and School. They are both self-contained, and I've equipped them for the purpose of this demo with 3 features. We're just going to call them, for simplicity's sake, person, window, and cog. So how do we react to the changes on Apple's side? And why hasn't it always been easy to reach same-day support in the past? Well, let's continue with the example. Let's say that at WWDC, Apple drops an update to all 3 of these features. What does this mean for Jamf? Well, in the traditional setup, Pro and School are their own silos. There are 2 teams that are developing, documenting, and monitoring and maintaining these features. So something like the cog there. Now, this doesn't sound very efficient. And moreover, the result may look very different. So let's say in this example, Pro very quickly implements the new feature. But School is going to do a little bit of research, talk to their customers, and it probably doesn't provide a lot of value to the education space. This happens a few times, and then suddenly, we are finding ourselves with 2 Jamf products that look and feel very, very different. So what's the way out? A word earlier, platform. So the idea of the platform is to build it once, but for all. So none of these features would be built natively in the Pro or School stack. Instead, we build them as shared platform services. And we have a single team who's responsible for the entire lifecycle. And then in the end, we hook them into the MDM products. The advantage of services being outside of the main product is that the whole is much more dynamic and scalable and sustainable. And additionally, updates can come out independent of the core MDM. So if WWDC rolls around and there's a change to the cog, we can immediately have this in both of our MDMs. Now, instead of cog, window, and person, let's picture real features, things that Jamf is delivering in this platform way. So we have ourselves compliance benchmarks, AI assistant, and of course, blueprints. These are prime examples of the concept that I just described. So building the platform took some time. But nowadays, it's robust, modern, and thanks to it, we're able to provide new value quicker and quicker. So you may be asking yourself, that's cool, but why do I need admin SSO? I know that some of you have asked me that directly in not such a nice way. So the key here is this. I'm going to just talk as this is sort of building out. But again, throughout the years, we've made multiple acquisitions. And as such, if a Jamf admin had access to multiple platforms, they needed to have individual admin accounts to access them. So with admin SSO, we're able to enable a single central account to access all of your Jamf products without the need to sign in over and over with different credentials every time. Now, more importantly for this talk, this includes the platform services, like Blueprints. Admin SSO is silently giving you access to these services that are living outside of the MDM core. So, here is an example of what this actually looks like. These are our 2 MDMs, Pro and School, right? But those parts in the box, that is not inside of the MDM. Instead, those are the platform services. Now, the admin who's using this doesn't see the red box, and frankly, they don't care, and that's the point, is that this should all be seamless as we sort of add in these features and update them quickly. Admin SSO is quite literally the key that is unlocking Blueprints and our other services. So, we started with the 0, we talked about tech, now on to the main point. How do we make you guys Apple heroes? How does this ecosystem that I just described actually help you accomplish goals? Well, let's start with a review of what we already offer, right? So Jamf Pro introduced Blueprints with 6 DDM declarations, we'll call them components, back in March. And Jamf School quickly caught up, and now the MDMs roughly offer the same thing. Software updates was added in June with more declarations on the way. And by the way, with software updates, it quickly became the most popular component. And it's no wonder why, because this declaration is key to how you manage which users can download and install OS updates, customize or disable beta enrollments, set deferral pyramids, all those sort of things. Altogether, the mixture of these few components keeps your devices secure, compliant, and aligned with your org policies. Additionally, I'm happy to announce that Jamf is now expanding Blueprints functionality to include configuration profiles for Mac and iOS within Blueprints. By bringing configuration profiles directly into Blueprints, we unlock the possibility of combining modern DDM declarations with traditional MDM configurations in one single package. You might be asking yourself, how is this possible? Well, there's an interesting Apple declaration called the legacy configuration profile. And within that, any MDM config profile can be activated on the device via the declarative channel. And one of the benefits, additionally, to these configuration profiles is that we are actively monitoring Apple's GitHub schema. We're looking for updates, and we're translating them and rolling them out in real time automatically. So it's not just same-day support, but it's pre-same-day support. Additionally, we used this opportunity and gave all the payloads a refresh. We simplified the settings. We've included only the keys that matter to you guys. And once again, all of this is available under a single UX, a single workflow. You won't see the difference between Apple DDM declarations and MDM configuration profiles on first glance. So let's talk a little bit about configuration profiles. These are the payloads that you can benefit from right now. And in fact, restrictions alone contains 150 items to allow and disallow on the device. That is a very, very detailed configuration that you can push out to your fleet. And best of all, is that configuration profiles via Blueprints in Jamf Pro were already launched. They are GA now. So please don't hesitate to open Jamf Pro and see what these things have in store. And additionally, the keys introduced just a few weeks ago at WWDC are already available in the UI for you to try out. But before you do, let's take just a little bit of time and talk about the do's and don'ts. Now that you have a basic understanding of Blueprints, these are some things that it's critical to understand. First off, admin SSO is required. But once you have admin SSO, you're literally minutes away from tinkering and deploying this feature. Additionally, Blueprints is built to be flexible. It's built to be dynamic. So work with smart groups and feel free to change things and configure things over and over again. Another one, too, is that one Blueprint has multiple OS support. So you can have iOS and Mac devices in the same Blueprint. And then, additionally, as I said earlier, MDM and DDM protocol are allowed to overlap. So please use them, experiment, find the way that they work best, and give that feedback to us. We're looking to capture that sort of stuff. And then finally, please, 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 plan, test, and then deploy. Start small, do a pilot, and then once you've figured out how you can fit your organization, please deploy it at scale. On the other side, what should you not expect? First off, this is not a pure replacement for configuration profiles and policies. Some settings are still available in config profile only, and there's currently no migration tool for existing config profiles. Also to be mindful that not all OS versions, particularly older devices, support DDM declarations. And then this last one, I hope you'll be a little excited about, is that features will be changing in here at a much quicker pace than I think that we're used to at Jamf Pro and Jamf School. So you should see things changing in here, and we hope you don't get scared. Hopefully it turns out to be a good thing, but just a heads up. All right, we've talked foundation, we've talked usage. Let's talk a little bit about what is next. So we delivered our first batch of components, but we have a long-term vision that includes full support for all declarative configurations and configuration profiles within Blueprints. On top of that, we want to have user channel support, which will support even more declarations, particularly those that need a user identity. And then API support for those of you that are looking to plug Blueprints into your company's automation software. Next, asset upload for declarations like service configuration settings. And then we are continuing to expand out reporting so that you have better understanding and visibility into what is happening with your fleet and your devices. And then a little bit down the road, we're looking at scoping enhancements, such as exclusions and leveraging activation predicates. This is feedback that we've received from some of you who have been trying out Blueprints already. And I want you to know that it is in the future, and we're taking feedback right now on how to improve it. So that's just the beginning. Stay tuned to the Jamf release notes for all the latest updates. All right, so there's so much more to come in Blueprints, and we're very, very excited about this journey in the future. But that's enough talking from me. Now for the part that you're probably all interested in, a demo. So please welcome out my two handsome co-hosts, Ant and Rob.
Wow, so that's a lot to unpack, right? And we've been telling you some of this over and over again today because it's important. So I hope that we're getting the message across to you. Now, like I say, DDM is Apple's latest and greatest when it comes to our management protocols. And in fact, Apple came out last WWDC and actually said any new functionality when it comes to management will be via the DDM method. And we kind of saw that to start off with. Let's think about iOS 18, for example. There was the calculator app and that new ability to scribble equations and let AI configure those for us and tell us the answers. That was actually only ever manageable through a declaration. But it's not the only thing that we've been given when it comes to DDM. We've also been given things that we've never been able to manage before. Things like service configurations. And that's where we're going to start today. So service configurations allows us to configure services that are bundled in with macOS. Things like sudo, Apache, SSH, those kind of things. The kind of services that if they're misconfigured, either by the user, intentionally or unintentionally, or potentially maliciously through a threat actor, will change the device posture of the device. Sorry, the security posture of the device. So these are things that we want to manage. Now, don't get me wrong. These aren't suddenly new things that we want to manage. We've actually wanted to manage these and attempted to manage these in the past. We've used tools like the macOS Compliancy Project and those kind of tools before in order to do this. But what we've actually done is not really manage them and more so put a workflow in place. That workflow where we set something and then monitor and then remediate. So let's take an example, right? We have this particular setting for this particular service that we want here that we've set as off. We've done that setting. We then monitor that, and if the user were to go away and change that setting to on, we've got some sort of remediation in place, probably a script or something like that, to turn that back off again. The fact that that was switched off in the first place, or back on, sorry, in the first place, probably rang alarm bells with people, paperwork, all sorts of other things that needed to happen. And depending on the remediation, that device might not have been in the ideal state for a period of time, depending on that remediation. So it could be a couple of seconds, but it might be until the device next checks in. Really depends on what you were doing. Now, this is where DDM and Jamf Blueprints really comes into play. Because with Blueprints and with DDM, we're able to change the game. No longer are we doing that monitor and remediate. We are able to manage this from the outset, so the user can't actually ever change that setting. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to show you. So Rob is going to be my hands for this demo today. He's Canadian, and it's Canada Day. So happy Canada Day, Rob. So there's a few things that we've done here. There's a couple of things that we've done as things we've done before so that we can just get things running really easily. We've got some resources at the end, so if this is one of those, this is one we prepared before, don't worry, hit the resources and you'll be able to see exactly what it is that we've done. But in terms of what we've got here, Rob has an admin machine, that's this one here, and then we've got a VM that we're going to act as a client machine. So that's this one here with that slightly different desktop. So the thing that we're going to manage first is SSH. So Rob, let's show everybody that there's no smoke and mirrors here, and let's just SSH into this client machine here. So you can see it's asking him for the password. I don't know whether he'll remember it. I was going to put a little sticky note there, but I got told that's bad practice or something like that. I don't know, maybe. Oh, he really has forgot the password too. This is great. Maybe you should have had that sticky note there. Oh, wow. Yeah, no pressure at all, Rob. Shy typer indeed. Oh, come on. It's capital M. What is going on? But you get the point is here that it's asking Rob for the password, right? So that is having this interactivity. He's clearly had too much maple syrup today, that's what it is. Dude. This is yes! Come on! Well done. Great. So as you can see, finally, Rob is able to SSH into this device. And importantly, it asked him for the password. So as long as he knew the password, he was able to get in. So we're going to manage SSH. So Rob, if you don't mind going across to Jamf Pro, and then to Blueprints, we are going to create a new blueprint, and we're going to name this Secure SSH, although, quite frankly, it was secure enough as it was because he didn't remember his password. Great, so now that we've done that, what we'll see, if you can scroll down a little bit, is along the, oh, this is where it gets weird as well, right-hand side, there's our components here. So, Rob, if you want to search for service configuration for me and click on it, that'd be fantastic. Now, I don't mind admitting this. The first time that I saw this, I kind of went, oh, this is strange. This isn't what I was expecting. Normally, when I try and manage something, it's tick boxes, drop-down menus, the kind of stuff we were used to when it comes to configuration profiles. So don't worry, we're going to help you through this. If you, like me, have looked at this and gone, not really sure what's going on. There are some clues on screen, though. The first thing it says is about it's going to need a file. It's a service configuration file. So we're going to have to provide something. Then talks about a URL. So there's a good chance we're going to have to host something somewhere. And then finally, there's the hash, which we'll get into in a second. So Rob, this is our first one we prepared earlier, but like I said, don't worry, we've got this in the resources. Do you want to show everybody what we've actually done with the configuration for SSH? Perfect. Now again, if you're anything like me, I went, oh, again, I don't really know what I'm supposed to be managing here, what the syntax is, what I can actually manage. Again, we've got resources here to help you, but for this demo, we've done 3 simple things. The first one is we're going to turn off that interactivity. So if Rob did remember his password the first time, we're not going to let him in anyway, unless he's got like a pre-shared key. The next one kind of explains for itself. It's to not allow the local root to log in. And then the next one is if there is an SSH connection, then we will disconnect that after 90 seconds of inactivity. Now, once we've got this configuration, or you've got your specific configuration, we need to zip this up. Now, Rob, you can see there that there is a particular file structure. Again, that is an important thing. Again, go to the resources, we explain that a little bit more there. Rob's already got his zip file there, so we're going to have to host this somewhere. Okay? Now, this can be anywhere that you like. For our example, we've actually used Amazon. For our testing, we actually used GitHub, and that's kind of a nice way to use some of the tracking when it comes to what your configuration might have looked like. But really, it doesn't matter. This can be a private file server if you want, but the key here is that your client device must be able to reach it. So please don't put them on private file servers if your devices are off-site and can't access it. So next thing we have to do is provide the hash. Now, this allows us to check and make sure that that particular zip file hasn't been tampered with between us uploading it and the client downloading it. And you're probably familiar with this because a lot of software vendors give you these hashes when you're kind of creating your own workflows to automate downloads directly from them. So again, Rob's put just a simple command in there, and we have that hash. So now we've got the 3 things that we needed. We have our file, we have our URL, and we've got our hash. So Rob, do you want to start to fill that in the Jamf Pro console for us? Fantastic. And then the last thing that we need to do there is select the service. We know this is for SSH, but we need to declare that to the device. So Rob, will you just hit that drop down and do that? Fantastic. Now click Add. Now, like any other configuration, we first need to scope this before anything happens. So if you don't mind opening the scope for us. The thing that I want to point out here is this is all the groups, static and smart, that you already have in your instance. So we're not asking you to recreate these. We're telling you to use what you already have to scope blueprints to your devices. So I think we have a JNL security group, if that's OK. Fantastic. So let's scope that to that. And what you'll notice across the top there is it says we have those undeployed changes. For me, this is really crucial, and I really like this feature, because this allows me to go away and come back, double-check what I've done before I deploy this to my devices. It allows me to get my teammate to check what I've done before we hit deploy. I think this is a really nice feature. Now, Rob, we are going to go away and deploy this one. And hopefully, what we'll see is this ends up on our client device. But just go back to Jamf Pro for me one bit. Thank you, Rob. How do I know that this has gone to our devices? So the first thing to point out is that new analytics bit there. When we go back into this blueprint, that will then get populated as to what's been deployed, what's pending, et cetera, et cetera. You can also do some API workflows if you really want to, but let's face it, as an admin, when we're testing these things, we normally have that test device sitting next to us, and we want to verify it directly on the device. With config profiles, we know how to do that. But how do we do that when it comes to declarations? So if you go to the system settings, you go to general, and you go to device management, this again is where all your config profiles are, the things that you're used to seeing, but you won't see the declarations there. Rob, can you double click on the MDM profile and scroll all the way to the bottom? There you will see our declarations, and you'll notice that our SSH one isn't there. We learned from Munich. We did this demo in Munich. Rob, can you give a reboot to that VM? Working with VMs, right? So whilst Rob does that, what the next thing that we're going to talk about after this is going to be how we can merge both config profiles and declarations together. Because you heard Michael say there's an overlap here. This is something that you're able to do. So Rob, are you in the, yeah, fantastic. Do you want to go to the configuration profiles and just find out that security passcode that we have for this device? So on the device, the client device, when it reboots and we can show you the rest of the thing, what we'll see is that there is a config profile on here that we've enforced with a config profile. We've used alphanumeric, and we've done a passcode length of 6. We also have a declaration on that device, right? Do you want to just show everybody that declaration? And in that passcode policy there, you'll notice we've got slightly different things. So we don't have the alphanumeric, but we do have complex passcodes, and we've got a minimum length of 10. So let's see if that VM is rebooted. And password again. Maybe we go get a coffee and he'll come back and he'll remember it, possibly. Come on, Rob, no pressure. You just can't get the staff, can you? He had one job. Right, so let's see if we've now got that declaration on there. Now we've given our VM a reboot. We have, fantastic. Let's pick up where we were going to go before we finish off the passcode thing. So you can see now that we've got the SSH configuration there. So Rob, do you want to try and see if you can SSH into this device once more from your client device? So notice there that it hasn't allowed us to even enter a passcode this time, okay? Because we've managed this configuration, right? And what we said, if you remember, is we turned off interactivity. We now are saying you can't put that passcode in there. So we've now managed this. Now, Rob, if he's going to be SSHing into his machine, I'd like to say he's a power user, but he's not showing very much power user with his passwords today, right? But he's a power user, he's got admin access, and he wants to do this SSH. So he's a bit annoyed that we've actually managed his device. Now, let's be fair, we know that a lot of our users are smart, especially if they're power users, and it's not difficult for them to kind of go, oh, I've gone on Reddit or wherever, and if I do a sudo remove Jamf framework, I don't have management on this anymore, and I can do whatever I want. So Rob's probably going to go and do that, since he is a little bit annoyed that I've managed his device. Oh, hey, Rob, it doesn't look like you can do that. So Rob's now really angry, and he's done a little bit more research, and he's realized that there's a Jamf folder in application support, and just kind of one of those, like, last-ditch efforts, let's see if I can get Jamf removed, he's going to do an RM on that particular folder. And again, he's not able to do this. Now, eagle-eyed people will have noticed when we were looking at the SSH configuration that there was also a sudo one on there. So Rob, do you just want to show that off? This was something that we sent down before the demo. And if you go to the device management, perfect, and then fly down to there and double-click on that for me, you can see we've also managed sudo. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to point out here. That location there will probably be familiar to some people as it's protected by system integrity protection. That means people aren't going to be able to delete it. They're not going to be able to edit this file. And because it's managed, something that we've pushed down as management, rather than that remediation workflow we were talking about before, it doesn't matter which user on the device tries to do anything. That could even be root. This takes precedence. So if we're not allowing people to do something with sudo, then we're not allowing anybody to do it. So Rob, why don't we show people what we've done with that sudoers file? Struggling to get that one out today, aren't I? OK, so there's a lot here, but there's a thing, so let's draw attention to a few bits and pieces. I'm going to stand like this because I need to read this too. In the middle there, we've got deny potentially destructive system binaries. So we've stopped anybody being able to use RM, which is why he wasn't able to delete that folder. But what's more interesting to me is we've got the split at the top and the bottom for the Jamf binary. We've been able to allow the Jamf binary for some verbs, but not others. So things like removing framework, people can't do. But Rob, if you go and did a sudo Jamf recon, for example, we should find that that works perfectly just fine. Perfect. So we're able to simplify some of these workflows we've had before where we've had to do that set, monitor, remediate, and we can just flat out manage these exactly as they need to be from the outset. So let's go back onto that passcode policy that we were doing a little bit of filler for whilst that device rebooted. So again, if you remember, we said we've got a config profile and a declaration on this device for passcodes. And the point here is we want to show you how these work together, because as Michael said, we can overlap these, but there are some things that you need to be aware of. So as we saw, config profile, but we might as well just look at it again. The config profile had alphanumeric as a requirement and a passcode length of 6, and the declaration had complex characters, a number of them as well, and a passcode length of 10. How do we think that these interact with each other? Rob, why don't we try and change your password and see what happens? I mean, you can probably change your password for something you will remember if you really actually want to as part of this demo. No? OK, fantastic. So if you look at the requirements here, there's a couple of things that we can notice. We have the alphanumeric requirements, and we have the special character requirement. That means that because they were two different settings from those different ways of being able to configure this, they've sort of merged together is the best way that I can describe it. Now, this might be something that is intentional, but it might also be something that you want to watch out for. So be aware that these do merge together. But the passcode, however, has taken the most restrictive one. We're kind of used to that when it comes to config profiles as well, right? But if you've got a declaration and a config profile on there that has the same setting, the most restrictive one wins. However, not everything is as black and white as on or off or yes or no. And if you were to configure that kind of setting with both a config profile and a declaration, we've found that the declaration normally wins out. But the official answer to everybody is unexpected results, which is why we're saying please test if you're going to move from profiles over to blueprints. And that's an important thing because now we get to talk about the new feature, the legacy config profiles. So Rob, if you can go over to Jamf Pro for us, we're going to add some restrictions into our blueprint demo that we already had, if that's OK. Again, down this right-hand side, we're able to either scroll or just search for restrictions. And we're going to hit restrictions there. If you click on that, Rob, and start to scroll, this list is huge. And I'm pretty sure everybody in this room has used restrictions before in config profiles, and we know how difficult it is, or can be, to find things. You might use the command F, but then you've got menu items and bits and pieces like that, and it can be a little bit difficult to find these items we want. Often, I find myself in the Apple documentation, and the friendly name that we say in a config profile doesn't match the technical name, and again, it's hard to match these things up. right? So this list is huge. It's always been huge. But with Blueprints, because it's for all of our platforms, this list is even bigger than it was before. But we've done some things to help us really narrow down the things that we're looking for at any given time. So, Rob, can you hit the filter button for me? And can you hit macOS? And can you hit iCloud? Because I definitely want to do something with iCloud. Now, that's reduced my list significantly. However, it's something to do with photos, and I can't quite remember what it's called. So, Rob, can you search photos for me? Fantastic. I've now been able to find the exact option that I want with just a couple of clicks. So whilst we've got this zoomed-in view, let's go and talk about some other bits and pieces as well. We've got that friendly name that I just mentioned. These are names that you're used to because of configuration profiles you've had in the past. And like I say, they don't always match up with the documentation. So we have that documentation name, that Apple documentation name, underneath. And we can search with that as well, which again, I think is fantastic. The other thing is when it comes to configuration profiles of the past, sometimes you've had to tick the box to disallow something, sometimes you've had to tick the box to allow something. And it can get a little bit confusing as to which way around this needs to be. So what I particularly like about this is that I give that description, or that description is given to me here, if false. So at this point, we need to say false, and that's going to give us the restriction that we want. But not only that, how many times have you done something with a restriction, and then you've looked at it on the end user's device and gone, I didn't quite do what I thought it was going to do? So where appropriate in these descriptions, we tell you what's going to happen as well on that device. Now, if we wanted to add this key to our blueprint, we simply tick the box, and then we hit true or false. So in this time, we'll hit false. So Rob, can you clear the filters for me for a second? Now, you'll notice that every single one of these keys has a tick box next to it. If it's not got a tick, it doesn't get sent with that blueprint. So if you were here for Mike's opening keynote this morning, he said it very well. This prevents us from sending default keys that do things that we don't want them to do. Plenty of times, again, that I've wanted to manage just one particular key. I send a config profile down, but it's got 10 other keys in there, and I accidentally manage something that I didn't mean to. So this stops that completely. I also want to do something with caching. I can't remember what the exact key is called, but you know what? We'll just search for caching, and look, that's how simple it is for me to be able to find something. Let's tick the box, or just hit false. That's also going to do the job. We're going to click add. Fantastic. And then that is it. That is our new legacy config profiles, but with that ability for us to really target the things that we want to do really nice and easy. So let's deploy that, Rob. That's great. Now, there's one other thing that I want to do before we actually go and verify this on the device. We're going to create another blueprint. So remember, at this point, this device has 2 blueprints to it. Remember, like Michael said, this is different to what you might be used to of blueprints of the past. So we're going to create a third one. Rob, if you don't mind creating a third one, we're going to call it software update settings. Fantastic, and we're going to create that. Again, we can then search or scroll the components there. We're going to look at the software update settings. Now, the bit that I want to really point out here is across the top corner, you can see the platforms that this particular blueprint will get delivered to, or this component will get delivered to. And you can see it's iOS, iPadOS, macOS, et cetera, et cetera. So as we build this out, I'm not going to be bothered about whether or not this is getting targeted to Macs, whether this is getting targeted to iOS devices. I'm just going to build it once. Because a setting like this, I probably do only want to build once. Why would I want to, and we've had to do this in the past, but why do I want to create the same settings 3 times? You know, one for my iOS, one for my iPadOS, one for my macOS. Wouldn't it be much more simpler for us to create this once and not really care what the devices go to and just let the devices do what they need to do? So let's set a few of these, and let's note on the OS that they're for. So at the top there, let's do the first one. Notice that one's for Mac. I think it's the third one down, Rob. This one's now specifically for iOS. We're going to make that the newest, the recommended cadence. And then we're going to do the install actions. Again, let's hit all of those to always. Again, notice that some of those are for iPadOS, some of those are for macOS. We don't really care. We just want to create our update settings that we know our entire fleet will be managed by. And then finally, at the very bottom, Rob, if you don't mind doing the security responses, we'll do allow and then restrict and click update. Now, when it comes to, we'll add that as well. Sorry, Rob, if you don't mind. Now, when it comes to scoping this, like I say, we're not going to go, we need to create this 3 times, one for macOS, one for iOS. No, we're going to scope this to all of our macOS devices and all of our iOS devices. It's a bit weird, right? A bit scary, something that we're not used to doing. So Rob, once you've deployed that, we will hopefully go across to our client device without having to reboot it this time. We should be able to see if we go to our settings, general, device management, into the MDM profile, scroll to the bottom, that we have our additional blueprints there. So at the top there, if you click on the JNL blueprint demo, that's where our restrictions live. Okay, the restrictions turn up there with the name of the blueprint we delivered them with. But the important one is that the update settings, the global settings there. If you look at these settings, these are the settings that we've just configured, and there's a particularly odd one there. Can anybody spot the odd one? I'm after some interactivity here. Can anybody spot the odd one? iOS. This isn't an iOS device, right? This is a macOS device. Now, this is the nice thing about DDM. It makes the devices clever. Okay, again, you've heard this a few times today. So because this is a macOS device, it just goes, hey, this setting isn't for me, and it will ignore it. And it's the same for all of the iOS devices that this same config got landed on. It will just ignore anything that's macOS. So it really gives us the ability to set once and makes our life much, much easier. I'm going to look to Rob for a second. Have I forgotten anything? We're good. Fantastic. So to wrap up, whatever you think about blueprints, whatever you thought about blueprints before today and how they work, stop. Jamf blueprints are different. Jamf blueprints are stackable, scalable, flexible, and as dynamic as the groups that you already have in your instances. They are a way for us to deliver Apple's new and latest, greatest DDM technology. And from an admin point of view, we've really thought about the design when it comes to managing and creating these configs. We want it to be easier for you. We know, as people that use this day in, day out as well, how hard it can be to find some of these things. We want it to be quick and easy. We don't want it to take more time. In fact, we want it to take less time. And then finally, and I think this is the big one, it gives us the ability to think different. We don't necessarily need those kind of workflows that we've been used to before, those set, monitor, remediate, those let's create the same config profile 3 different times because we need to send it to iOS, macOS, etc. These are actually really big things for us as Mac admins, I think. We're quite good at being stuck in our ways. We've always done it this way, so we're going to carry on doing it that way because we know it works. So I really do think that DDM and blueprints will actually challenge us to rethink some of this stuff. And I'm quite excited about what the future holds here. Now, like I said, there's a couple of stuff that we've done during this demo that I said, here's one that we prepared earlier. Please check out these resources. It's got everything that you need about that sudo configuration, the SSH configuration, and all of that kind of good stuff. So please, please, please do go away and look at that. After the fact as well, the keynote will be up there, and there'll be a recording of this if you ever want to go and watch this again, or ask a colleague to watch it, or any of those kind of things. And with that, I think I'm pretty much bang on time, so thank you very much. We will be at the live lounges that start at 4:30, I believe, and that's the best place to ask all 3 of us any questions that you have. So thank you very much for your time.
Top work, guys. Well done, thank you. Actually, Michael would like to take a stab at a quick question.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. We've been asked by, hey Sam, thank you for the question. What is the best practice to migrate from active legacy config profiles to blueprints at scale? Can both be deployed at the same time, even with the same settings? Which one would take priority?
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great question. So the short answer is come to the live lounge, because we can talk about this a little bit more in depth, and I would look forward to it. But our sort of recommendation at the moment is to start with specific use cases and sort of carve those out of your active configuration and finding spaces where you can sort of land and then expand it out to take over so that you're eventually fully migrated. It's not an easy process, and it sort of changes based off the organization, but that is where I'd sort of start. And like I said, we're going to be in the live lounge, so please come, and happy to talk about it directly. Thank you.
Good show. Thanks, everyone. Give it up for Rob, Ant, and Mike.